Part of NBA free agency is figuring out which of a team's impending free agents should they re-sign. Last offseason, the Knicks signed a lot of guys to one-year deals, so many of the contributing players in this year's rotation, like Nerlens Noel, Alec Burks, and Derrick Rose, will become unrestricted free agents. So in this video, let's analyze all of the Knicks' key impending free agents, decide if the Knicks should re-sign them, and I'll predict if the Knicks will bring them back. But before we continue, please like the video and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a banger. Now let's get started. The first player we're going to talk about is Nerlens Noel. He was one of the best defensive bigs in the league this season. It became invaluable to the Knicks after Mitchell Robinson went down with a foot injury. Nerlens Noel is an amazing rim protector, a good switch defender, and a good rebounder. We know that Noel has bricks for hands and struggles to catch a pass, but what he brings to the court as a defensive anchor is a key part of this team. The Knicks should definitely look to bring back Nerlens after how he played this year. He's definitely due a big raise. Last offseason, Noel only signed a one-year $5 million deal, which was an absolute bargain. While I do believe that the Knicks will have interest in re-signing Noel, I think there's a good chance the Knicks end up getting outbid. Nerlens is going to look to get paid this summer. $5 million is actually the most money Noel has ever made in an NBA contract. Back in 2018, Nerlens Noel foolishly rejected a 4-year, $70 million extension from the Mavericks. Now is the time for Nerlens Noel to cash in. It's already been reported that multiple teams like the Mavericks will have interest in signing Noel. I believe a team is going to offer Noel a big multi-year deal, and because the Knicks are trying to save cap space for max players, they'll probably end up getting outbid. I'm not saying I want this to happen. I would love for the Knicks to bring back Nerlens Noel, but I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up on another team. Next, let's talk about Alec Burks. Burks was another key part of the Knicks this season. He averaged a good 13 points per game off the bench, a bit streaky at times, but the shooting and scoring he brought this year was a huge part of the Knicks finishing as the 4 seed, and he also had a knack for hitting clutch shots. Burks is another guy whose contract was an absolute steal. $6 million is quite a bargain considering what he brings to the table. The Knicks should definitely look to bring him back because they need his production off the bench. He's definitely due for a raise, but if the Knicks can get him to re-sign, I think that's a good move. There's definitely going to be competition to sign Burks, of course. Every contender needs a guy who's going to produce off the bench, but I don't see a team offering him a crazy deal, especially at his age of 30. The Knicks are going to have to give him a raise, but with how critical he was to the Knicks' success this season, I think he'll return. Next, let's talk about Derrick Rose. The Rose acquisition really turned this team around. Before the trade, the Knicks were floating around 500, but acquiring D Rose turned the Knicks into a very good team, allowing them to finish at the 4 spot. He gave the Knicks some much needed scoring and playmaking at point guard that they were getting from nobody else on the roster. We know that Rose has an amazing relationship with Thibodeau, so if the Knicks want him back, I'm sure he would love to stay. The Knicks are going to be in the market for a point guard. It's already been reported that the Knicks want Lonzo Ball and that they'll pursue other veteran point guards like Kyle Lowry. One advantage to bringing Rose back is that they can probably sign him for cheap. Rose probably won't command too much, while it's been reported that Lonzo is likely to receive a contract near $100 million. Rose doesn't give the Knicks a long-term point guard, but he stabilizes the position without the Knicks having to break the bank. Because of his production and relationship with Thibodeau, I do think that Rose will likely be back. Next, let's talk Reggie Bullock. Bullock was a very good role player for the Knicks this year. He was the starting 2 guard for most of the season, and his 3 and D abilities were a key part of the Knicks' success. He was often given the job of guarding the other team's best player, and he shot an impressive 40% from 3 this year. That's really good value for a guy that only made $4 million last season. I think the Knicks should definitely bring him back. Even if he doesn't start, a 3-and-D player like Bullock is crucial for winning basketball. I could easily see the Knicks bringing Bullock back on another 1 or 2 year deal. He seemed to really enjoy playing here, and he knows he's going to play a role on the team next year, so I believe the Knicks will re-sign Bullock. Next, Frank Ntilikina. I don't see much of a reason to bring him back. Yes, his shooting did improve, but he was still out the rotation for most of the year and only really played when the guys ahead of him were injured. He still struggles to create offense for himself off the bounce after 4 years in the NBA. I don't even think the Knicks will extend a qualifying offer to make Frank a restricted free agent. Frank will probably sign a minimum contract on another team and play a role as a defensive specialist off the bench. After the signing of Luka Vildoza at the end of the year, the writing is pretty much on the wall for Frank. Next, Taj Gibson. Somehow, even at the age of 36, Gibson proved to still be a good rotation big for the Knicks. After Mitch went down, he became the Knicks' main backup center and he thrived in that role. He can still defend, he can still rebound, and he can still finish at the rim. The Knicks should definitely look to bring Taj back next year. He probably won't ask for more than the veteran minimum, and with his relationship with Coach Tibbs, he probably resigns. Next, Elfrid Payton. Payton was easily the most hated player on the team this year. Payton did have his moments, and at times, he was able to give the Knicks a reliable scoring punch, but he still can't hit a three to save his life, and he became pretty much unplayable in the playoffs. Payton is ideally a backup point guard in today's NBA. I know he's Scott Perry's guy, but I don't see a world where the Knicks choose to bring him back next season. And finally, let's talk about Mitchell Robinson. We don't know quite yet if he'll be a free agent, but he's worth a mention. The Knicks have two options with Mitch. They can either extend his contract now or pick up his fourth-year team option, which would make him an unrestricted free agent in 2022. I think the latter will happen. Mitch did make strides this year. When healthy, he's one of the best defensive bigs in the league. He's also a good rebounder and an amazing finisher. But the problem with Mitch is that he's too injury prone. Yeah, he's great when healthy, but he only played about 30 games this year. I think the Knicks will opt in on Mitch's fourth-year team option. They're going to want him to prove that he can play a full season next year before they decide to invest in him long-term. But anyway, guys, that's all of the Knicks' key free agents, and that's going to be it for me. Tell me in the comments who you would like to see the Knicks bring back in free agency. Make sure to like the video and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and have a great rest of your day.